I'll start off, Ms. Lantsman, with you, because your party made the announcement on crime today. And I wanted to ask you about the decision to invoke the notwithstanding clause. It's serious if you invoke it to pass a law. It means to do so, you're willing essentially to suppress a right as granted by the Charter. Can you be unequivocal that this and only this type of a law would be the only thing you use that for?
Well, I don't think I need to be unequivocal because the leader was unequivocal today. He says that we will use the notwithstanding clause to end the decade of out-of-control crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in our streets. And on this, I think you have to be insane to not believe that somebody who, in this case, killed 6 people while worshiping in a mosque is potentially out in 25 years. Not only does that re-victimize the families who have to hear about, who have to sit through potential parole hearings, but this means that he's getting, about 4.5 years or 4 and a bit for each of those murders. You can't get a bulk discount when you kill multiple people, and those people should be behind jail for life. And life should mean life, and judges should be able to give those consecutive sentences. And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll use the notwithstanding clause for this.
Just for this, to be sure, not for other things related to crime?
Well,
just this
on
one law?
On this issue, most certainly. And we will use the notwithstanding clause on liberal crime.
But
liberal-driven crime in this country. But there is nobody that believes that they are safer after 10 years in the streets. We've had gun crime go up by 160%. We've had violent crime, gang-related crime go up by 50%. We've had hate crimes in this country rise by 250%. And each and every person feels like they have been victimized in their own neighborhoods, on their own streets, in their own homes, taking public transit. So we will use the notwithstanding clause on this and on to fight liberal crime that they've unleashed into this country.
With great respect, that's 2 different things. And I'm not trying to take away from the criticism, and we'll ask your colleague about the record of the last 10 years on crime.
Well, he doesn't want to talk about the record of the last 10 years.
Just let me finish. There's a big, just saying, this one law and invoking the notwithstanding clause, which again does suppress a right. The use of it does suppress a right as granted by the Charter.
The use of it actually protects the rights of Canadians. It protects
So is it doing that in Bill 96 or Bill 21
it certainly
in Quebec?
Protects the rights of those who have been victimized by crime. It protects every single Canadian. It protects them from things like Bill C-75, which has allowed repeat violent offenders out on the streets. It protects people from Bill C-5, which took away mandatory minimums for the most violent offenses. Those are the things that we are going to reverse in Liberal policy. We're going to take those bills right off of the table. This was a choice by the Liberals to put these bills through. It was a choice to be soft on crime, and I think we want to do the exact opposite.
And again, I'm not trying to take away from that criticism, but a couple of things that you said there. For example, when you talk about Bill C-75, that was in response at the time to a court decision that was referencing overrepresentation of minorities in the jail system. And even the use of the notwithstanding clause is in response to a decision from the Supreme Court. Should Canadians take from your posture on this and your willingness to invoke the notwithstanding clause that a Conservative government would not have any deference for court rulings?
We will make sure that repeat violent offenders and those mass murderers in this case, people who have killed 6 people in a mosque, are behind bars forever. That's what you should take from this.
No matter what.
Well, they should be in jail for life.
No, I mean, I just mean insofar as I'm asking you about decisions that come down from upper courts. Does that not hold any weight with the Conservatives?
Everything that we've put together on our crime agenda, we believe that we believe that it withstands the court. And I'm not going to decide what the court is going to say about legislation. But we want to be tough on crime. We want to make sure that people are safe in their streets, in their homes, in their neighborhoods, and we want to stop the last 10 years of violent crime in our streets.
So let me pick up there, Mr. Naqvi, and ask you about a couple of things that your party is now proposing when it comes to addressing public safety for Canadians. The 2 things that really stood out to me in what you proposed, the big announcement was, I believe, last week, hiring 1,000 new CBSA personnel in doubling down on the buyback program that Justin Trudeau, the former Prime Minister, and his government originally introduced. It stuck out to me because I've done countless interviews with people who served as public safety ministers in which they told me additional officers at the border were an invention of the union representing those orders, and dismissed the calls for doing so. And the buyback program was something that your government introduced or promised to do in 2019, and it has yet to launch. It's not even supposed to until later this year. So why should Canadians basically believe you're going to fix problems that your party until months ago either denied existed or failed to address adequately when it was in government?
So let me start by first saying that what we are hearing from Pierre Poilievre is outdated, unconstitutional ideas to fight crime that are going to result in taking away rights of Canadians. We have to be really mindful of this. We cannot be cavalier with using the notwithstanding clause to take rights of Canadians. The Charter exists for a reason. Mr. Poilievre, in fact, in the past have spoken before and has said he will use the notwithstanding clause in other criminal law matters as well. And look where that has taken us. We have seen other conservative premiers in Canada, like Danielle Smith and Doug Ford, using notwithstanding clause, taking rights of really marginalized minorities. So I think Canadians have to be very careful when they hear any politician talking about using notwithstanding clause to make them safe. In fact, what it's going to do is make them unsafe, and it's not going to solve the problem. And that is why what we are focusing on is on organized crime, on serious crime, things like gun violence, repeat gun violence, things like intimate partner violence. This is where we need to make sure that there's more emphasis, whether it's bail reform, whether it's revoking license of any gun owner who's been convicted of intimate partner violence, for instance. This is how we're going. What we need to do is make our community safe, not by invoking the notwithstanding clause.
But my question for you, with respect, Mr. Naqvi, was about the substance of what else you're promising to do. The buyback, again, you're saying we're going to have this buyback program, we're going to get guns off the street. You promised it in 2019, and it hasn't even launched yet. The promise to hire 1,000 new CBSA officers, I mean, those officers were cut years and years ago. I kept asking and asking over the last year, what about hiring more? And I was literally told point blank that that is essentially an invention of the union. And again, when you criticize the other party's platform, it is like, if I go to the crime severity index, information based on Statistics Canada, the overall crime severity increase has increased significantly over the past decade, up 17% between 2013 and 2023. Doesn't your government need to take your party need to take some responsibility for it? And what do you say to Canadians who look at your party tonight and say, like, you didn't help us those 10 years, why would we trust you to now?
Well, Vassy, we are basing a decision on evidence. A lot of circumstances have changed. When, for example, take the border. I mean, with our changing relationship with the United States, we need to make sure that our borders are secure and that we have well-trained officers, not only to address the issue around fentanyl that we're working with U.S. Very, very closely, but also around guns that may be getting smuggled into Canada, other drugs that may be coming in.
For years.
Yeah, and
we
then
know
that's why that's why we are listening, and we're investing. Our commitment is to invest in hiring those officers, not only just CBSA officers, but RCMP, 1,000 new RCMP officers as well, so that we can provide that appropriate safety and security for our communities. These are important investments that will make sure that Canadians are safe at all times.
But why didn't you make them already, if they were so important?
Well, we're responding to the needs in the communities. You know, our platform is really clear to make sure that if there is a need, that we will have the resources available to meet those needs so that our local communities are safe. This is what I'm hearing in my community here in Ottawa Centre. People want to make sure that their neighborhoods are safe, the small businesses are safe, and we're providing compassionate care for those who may need it, but at the same time, our focus remains to have our community safe.
Mr. MacGregor, I want to bring you in the conversation. I wanted to ask for your party's a stance on the use of the notwithstanding clause here, because Mr. Singh came out today criticizing it. And I wondered, why is it okay for Premier Legault to use that clause to pass, for example, his French language law, which Mr. Singh said last month was okay, and not okay for the Conservatives to use it in the case of people who are mass murderers?
Well, I want to stay focused on the topic at hand, which is, number one, we have to start from a position that Canadians deserve to feel safe in their communities. That has to be the number one priority. And I want to empathize with Canadians, because I think in this conversation that you see with Liberals and Conservatives, we seem to be stuck between the half measures of the Liberals and the ideologically rigid and evidence-free policies of the Conservatives. Like the Conservative policy announcement is more back to the future. It's recycling old failed policies. And for the Liberals to suddenly take an interest in their border when they've been in power for 10 years, I questioned former Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc on this at the Public Safety Committee. Even with the hiring that's going on, they are not going to recover from the deficit that was created by the Conservative government. So it is a bit rich from both of these parties to talk about this when they both share some responsibility for where we're in. Our position is that the notwithstanding clause is a slippery slope, and it is a fact that within the criminal code, judges already have the tools that they need. There is a section in the criminal code that lists aggravating factors, and we have to put our trust in the justice system and in judges to look at the circumstances before them for each individual case, and they can apply the appropriate sentence for that. We need more resources in our justice system. I don't think anyone is going to argue against that, but we cannot go down these rabbit holes which have been proven not to work in the past. And we also have to be bold and recover from the half measures of a Liberal government from the last 10 years.
I guess I wonder, though, in that vein, why your party is critical of the use of that notwithstanding clause in this matter, but will not criticize Premier Legault in Quebec for doing the same with a French language law, which English language minorities said infringed on their rights. Is it a political calculation that you're basing your criticism on?
For me, the calculation in this conversation has to deal with our criminal justice system and with public safety. That's the topic of today's conversation. This is a very weighty matter, and the consequences of the decisions we make as policy makers, as legislators, they have profound consequences for the communities that we serve and for the criminal justice system as a whole. I think Canadians deserve to have an honest conversation about this. They need to see a justice system that is more resourced. So we need more officers at the border. The RCMP need better resources to interrupt criminal organizations. But we also need to be bold with policies and with funding that help our communities and provide them with the crime prevention programs that were previously cut under Conservatives. And we're still suffering that deficit from Conservative cuts with the CBSA. So again, I think both of these parties in different ways have let Canadians down, which is why we're having this conversation right now.
Okay, I have time for one quick more round, and I wanted to ask more generally about the state of the race. Ms. Lantsman, I want to talk to you about Doug Ford, Premier Doug Ford's comments today, essentially saying sometimes the truth hurts in reference to Corey Tonight, his campaign manager's criticism of the Conservative campaign. He called it campaign malpractice. What responsibility does your party bear for losing a 25-point lead in the polls? Well, is he right?
Here's what I hear. I've knocked on doors in my own riding, in many other ridings, and what we hear is the constant refrain that housing prices are skyrocketing. Rent has doubled. Mortgage payments have doubled. Interest rates are out of control. People are eating at food banks. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder out of control interstates. What I don't hear is the name of staffers or the name of strategists that ever come up at the door. So we hear the message of change, and I think on April 28th, Canadians will be able to make that decision on if they want 4 more years of the lost Liberal decade, or if they want a new Conservative government that is actually going to put Canadians, Canadian families, and Canada first.
But put aside the strategist. This is the Premier of Ontario, who is also, under the umbrella of a progressive Conservative. Like, why has there not been any outreach from the Poilievre team to one of the country's most powerful Conservatives? Like, what does it tell voters in Ontario?
Well, we work with most of those MPPs on a regular basis. They're outdoor knocking with us, as you saw Caroline Mulroney introducing Pierre Poilievre at a big speech, and we will continue speaking to Canadians about the issues that they care about. And on April 28th, they will make that decision. And I think if you have questions for Doug Ford, you perhaps call him on his cell phone.
Well, I will throw them his way. Mr. Naqvi, I wanted to ask you about so-called Buttongate. And we'll talk about this more later on with our panel. Why are those individuals responsible for it only reassigned and not fired? And isn't your party doing what I've heard people in your party say so frequently throughout this campaign. We're in a time of crisis. We can't be negative. We can't be divisive. Yet that's exactly what these staffers were doing. They were being very negative, very divisive. They were invoking Trump to further their own cause politically. Shouldn't there be more severe consequences for them?
Well, what they did is unacceptable. This is not the campaign we're running. Mark Carney was very clear and has apologized for that. That's not the values of our campaign. Our campaign is focused on issues. Our campaign is focused on providing a very competent, experienced plan that will allow for Canada to assert its sovereignty as a country and rebuild our economy so that we are less reliant on the U.S. That's the conversations I'm having at the doors. People want to vote for Mark Carney and the Liberals because they see the experience that he brings to this really important work that needs to happen in earnest as soon as this election is over. That will remain our focus, and we'll make sure that we continue to run a thoughtful, focused campaign that is focused on ideas and having these very healthy democratic debate and not frivolous stuff.
These individuals, with respect, have not been fired, right? Again, they're not removed from, or even removed from the campaign. They've just been reassigned. And to be clear, what they were trying to do was make it seem like Conservatives would say the election was stolen.
Well, what's the role of those individuals is that's a party matter, and for us, our focus is to make sure that we're running a campaign that is focused on issues. This is serious times. Canadians deserve serious leadership. That's what we need to do. That should have not happened, and we will going to continue to provide a plan that speaks to the moment and make sure that Canada remains a strong country once we start important work of rebuilding.
Mr. MacGregor, I'll just jump off that question with a final question to you, because today I listened to Jagmeet Singh sort of push back on questions around where the polls are at as well. Why is it okay for your party to criticize or doubt the polls, but when the Tories do it, Mr. Singh accuses them of election denialism?
Well, I mean, everyone's got different interpretations of polls, and that's especially so during a campaign period. You know, I have kept my work on the ground here in my beautiful riding of Couch and Malahat Langford. And what I can tell you is that, number one, there is a growing aversion to Pierre Poilievre because of the fact that he seems to take a lot of his political cues from Mr. Trump. And I think the question that I'm hearing now is a lot of my residents in this riding are starting to ask themselves, you know, we can't really trust either Liberals or Conservatives to keep in mind the things that we care about in any negotiations with Trump, whether that's our healthcare, environmental issues, or workers' rights. And so for New Democrats, especially here on Vancouver Island, you know, we have an established record fighting for those things. We know that both the Liberals and the Conservatives have spotty records on that. And, you know, the only poll that counts is the one in 2 weeks' time. So there's still lots of time left. There's going to be some important leaders' debates this week. And I think a lot of Canadians are going to be making up their minds over the Easter weekend. So game on. Let's continue this good conversation that we're having right across the country.
Just very quickly, though, again, you jumped to comparing the Conservatives to Trump. Why is it okay for the NDP to criticize the polls and not the Tories? Why is it Trump for them and not for you?
I am not one who has publicly criticized the polls. All I have kept my comments to is the fact that sometimes they have to be taken with a grain of salt. They're a snapshot in time. And again, we can see wild swings. I think one thing that is certain in this election is that we are still dealing with a fairly volatile electorate. And I think we're going to see things firm up over the next week or so, especially after the Easter weekend. And we've got a lot happening this week with the leaders. This will be a much-watched event, both in French and in English.
I think you're right. I think we can all agree maybe on if one thing, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for making time for the discussion. I appreciate it.